Hi, parents. Well, hope you're having a great weekend. I needed to get on and bring something to your attention to get us all on the same page. So, if you don't already know, we are in the midst of a writing project in our North American Birds unit. And when the kids have been at the schoolhouse, we have really been working on every step of this project to help them to build this skill. And we really need your partnership with this. We can't do it without you. So at this point, as of Thursday, they began a rough draft. And that is the step that we are at. However, this project began back in lesson 3. And back in lesson 3, it was some foundational steps. And so I'm making this video just to bring that to your attention. If you aren't familiar with that, or if you didn't know, I would like you to please get your eyes on your kids' work. So back in lesson 3 is when we began, they chose a topic and we began some brainstorming. So there is a page, it's page 27, where they began just writing down the thoughts that they had about what they wanted to write about with their topic. And these topics were birds, bird-related topics. And so if you could just look at their brainstorming, help them if they need to do a little bit more, just look at it and see where they're at with it. The upper elementary, their brainstorming probably was obviously different. My upper elementary students was bullet points. It could have been thought bubbles. It could have just been pictures. But getting their thoughts going was the goal. And the next step happened in lesson 7, and they began kind of organizing their thoughts into points, main points. So we helped them with this step at the schoolhouse. We helped them kind of think through how they want to organize their content. The upper elementary was actually doing some research. And so if you could go and look at these pages and just verify that they, where were they at with that? As I said, the upper elementary needed to do some research. This research could happen on the teacher's guide. They could use the teacher's guide with your supervision. They could use the internet, finding a good source, not just Wikipedia, not just the first thing that pops up, but a good source to find some good facts about their topic. I believe it's the early elementary and early reader, they could kind of organize their ideas by thinking about answering some questions like who, what, when, where, and why. This was just a suggestion if they needed help kind of guiding them to get content onto the page, thinking through what are some answers to these questions and what are we writing about. So that was lesson 7. Then the step we just finished was in lesson 11, where they were now taking their ideas and composing a rough draft. And some of them put their rough drafts, this is my early reader, some put their rough drafts directly in their notebooks. They could have written it on a separate piece of notebook paper. But please see if you can find their rough draft and kind of just go through it with them. We spent a good amount of time on this. However, we had a good amount of kids that missed this with us because they were either out or they got picked up early. And so I know that there are several kiddos, even if they were there for the lesson, their rough draft is probably not complete. And I will say that I understand this is a challenging project. That's why we're spending so much time on it, and that's why we're breaking it into chunks and not doing it all at one time. And so if you could just help to see your child's steps along the way and then help them figure out, okay, what are they missing within each step, that will be very helpful. If your child is really overwhelmed about writing, that's also normal, but we want to help build their confidence. So one option that you have is they could dictate to you what they want to say, and you can write it for them, get their ideas, let it be their ideas, their words, but get it on the page, and then that way they can have a rough draft, and then they can end up, once that rough draft is complete, they can be the ones to copy it and make their final paper. And that way they are going to end up with their own essay, their own paragraph, their own copy of this work, but you helped them get from point A to point B, and that's totally fine. Sometimes we have to do that a few times before they are able to do this on their own. And that's what this is about. So on Thursday of this week at the schoolhouse, we are going to be doing writing conferences. Mrs. Parker and I are going to be conferencing with the kids. We're going to look at their rough drafts, and we're going to help them to see, what do they need to add, what maybe needs to be rearranged, what needs to be corrected, those kind of things. But obviously we can't do that if they don't have a completed rough draft. And so we want that time to be really valuable. So if you could help us by going into lesson 3, where they were brainstorming, lesson 7, where they were beginning to organize some ideas, and then lesson 11, where they were supposed to write their rough draft. You have until Thursday at the schoolhouse of this week to get this done. So I'm just asking that you prioritize this above all the other lesson stuff, that you really try to prioritize this so that we can work with them and help them to really come away with a paper that they can be proud of. And we're really wanting to make the most of this project. So please reach out with any questions, and have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday.